This is section 3 of India and Britain.
India is a place that fell victim to Britons, making the savage people better. Britain is a place that has much more horrible history than what we'd like to believe.
This is the aftermath of the 1857 rebellion in May.
The British didn't like the fact that the Indians were trying to take their freedom back. They thought that this act of resistance proved to the rest of Britain that the Indians weren't civilized or humane, leading them to be even more racist. The British spread a bad name about India throughout the rest of the country. The punishment for trying to resist the British was the killing of Indians in Allahabad a month later.
Queen Victoria created the Proclamation of 1858, while at the same time the Government of India Act of 1858 was passed. Did you know that Queen Victoria's proclamation was actually the response to the act of the Indian Rebellion? The EIC, East India Company, was vested with the authority and the crown, which is the British monarchy. Still on the topic of Queen Victoria, she and her representatives weren't allowed to interfere with India's police and customs.
With the proclamation that the Queen made, the government tried to bring in high-class Indians and Indian beliefs into it. Some believe that the reason for the rebellion was because the British were interfering with the Indian customs too much. The British made a place in the government because they thought that the Indians would act more positively if their race had a place in the government, even though the British still remained supreme leaders. However, if an Indian was thought to be a threat to the British government or rule, they would be blown from cannon. Moving from that, after the proclamation, both Indians and the British were wondering what would become of India.
Britain had to reorganize the land after the sepoys or Indian soldiers rebelled. They forced the Indians to pay for the losses of the conflict that the Indians created. The Indians will always owe money to the British, even when the British was making a practical use to the new taxes. Since the British were making their taxes worse, the Indian people eventually became discontent and were unwilling to allow the abusive and strict colonial rule the British have created.
In the Municipal Courts Act of 1882, the British tried to empower Indian elites in the government. The reason for this was because if the government was blamed, it would go to the Indians. During that time, India had a debt to pay to Britain, so the government had to raise the taxes. But since the British didn't want another rebellion, they sought Indians that were both Hindu and Muslim, so that the competition would be between the Indians only.
We're done with our part of the history. Lily out.
Tara out. Have a great day.